So we've seen that the JRE, the Java runtime, comes with a number of built-in permission classes, such as file permission. And we've seen how we use those. But suppose those built-in permissions aren't what we need. Suppose we want to use our own permission. Well, we can write our own permissions. So we are able to write custom permissions. And to do that, we typically extend the base class basic permission. Now, obviously, we could extend one of the other built-in classes, but more often than not, you'd extend basic permission. Basic permission has a 2-argument constructor, and we provide an implementation of that. And then more importantly, permissions have what's known as an implies method. We have the permission that we've been granted through the policy file, and then we have the permission that somebody's asking for. So for example, in the policy file, we might have been given read access to a file, and here somebody's asking for write access to that file. This would be the same permission. It would be a file permission against the same file. If we've only been given read access and somebody's asking for write access, then the permission call should fail. So read access doesn't imply write access. Now the opposite probably is true. So if I've been given write access to the file, then I almost certainly want to be able to read the file. So write does imply read. So all permissions have an imply method that we have to implement. Once we've created the permission, and we'll see how we do that in a moment, we add an entry into the policy file. And custom permissions follow the same naming conventions that built-in permissions. So we give it the name of the class that implements the permission. In this case, we're going to model a spaceship, and spaceships can fly at warp speed, and they have a max warp. And in this case, we're going to say the max warp is 9. So by adding this permission to our policy file, we're giving the spaceship the ability to fly at warp 9. Our permission class would look like this. So it'd be a class called warp permission. It would extend basic permission. And this is the 2-argument constructor. It has a name, which would be max warp, and the action. And the action in this case is the value to which we can warp at. So we can warp it up to 9. If this is a file permission, then the name would be the name of the file that we're applying permission for, and the action would be one of read or write. So the implies method. The implies method can be difficult to implement. With permissions, one permission is a subset of another permission. And if we have these two permissions, the fact that we have A implying B does not mean that B implies A. So again, if we have read and write, write implies read, but read does not imply write. So it's really important we get implies correct, and it can be difficult to correctly implement implies. So our implies will look something like this. We are saying, first of all, is the permission class a warp permission? And if it's not, return false. We call our base class, and if that fails implies, then we fail. Otherwise, we cast the permission passed into us to be a warp permission. So now in this case, this permission that we have here would have been created from the policy file. So our warp factor will be whatever's been set in the policy file. The permission that's passed to implies is the permission that's being asked for. So we have to be sure that the warp factor we've been granted is greater than the warp factor somebody's asking for. If that's the case, we can return true, and if it's not, we fail the implies call. So let's write some code to see this in action.